Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the NLC Division 2 Spring Promotion Tournament 2 Electric Boogaloo. We are here after K5 took a pretty decent win against Invulnerables, who put up a fair fight. Flipper, got a few minutes before we get into the next game. How do you think that Invulnerables are going to need to respond?
I think for me, they need to look towards their early to mid game. They did okay, but if they're gonna keep picking these kind of early game comps, I need to see more from them in these early stages. So if I'm their coach, I would tell them, okay, we need to go back to some more skating. We are playing a bit too slow, and you can't really expect to change that up immediately in a best of five. So I'm looking towards to see if they maybe go for a bit more skating, try to match these kinds of Siviers and see if they can actually take it to them in the later stages of the game.
Because that was the key thing, right? We had 10 minutes in that game with one kill happening. And when you've got stuff like a Sivir and a Graves, those are champions that are always going to be favored in situations like that. So I really like what you're touching on. I think some of that needs to come from the jungle as well. Be a bit more proactive on stuff like the Viego. Try and get some of these ganks down. Because when you get into the late game, you're trying to dive into a 4-item poppy. It just becomes so much more difficult.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a harder type of game if you have to kill such a big tank in front of you. And when I'm looking towards K5, I'm definitely just saying, okay, you had a very solid draft here in game one. You had the good scaling. You're able to keep composed. You're able to, even though there was the small hiccup at Drake where Invulnerable were able to take a very good fight, they were still able to maintain it through, keep calm, take the next fight, and just cleanly close out the game from there. I want to see from them that they're able to maintain this up now. They are playing very well, and they need to make sure that they're able to keep playing at this level if they want to continue to take these games. Because if they slip up and they start playing just a little bit worse, then I think Invulnerable's ready to snap and take the games away from them.
Oh, absolutely. And obviously, Invulnerables, after losing that game, they've got side selection. They've elected to stay on the red side, so keeping counter pick options available for them if they want to go towards that. And I think they're going to need them because whilst losing this series, it doesn't knock you out of contention at all. Falling into that losers bracket, it's not where you want to be.
Definitely. It's definitely not what you want, especially if they do end up. We did say we didn't expect a 3-0, but you don't want to get 3-0 here in the
No.
beginning of this tournament because it does put your momentum very far back and it can put you into a slump in a sense. So we do want to see them come back strong in this game too and actually see if they can take this game.
So, looking a bit towards the champion select, do you feel like there are any picks that K5 piloted in that previous game that need to just be taken off the board? That Invulnerables just go, we can't deal with that anymore. And I think I know what you're going to say.
I mean, there's two champions here. I think Nodus Thresh, if
Yep.
I'm looking at a variable, even though as much as I, as a caster, want to see it, I think that they should ban it away because he's very proficient on this champion. And when I'm looking towards another pick, it is this Silas because he was able to, at so many crucial moments, just be the pivotal factor. I think Floops is gonna have many of these types of late game meta carries that can dish out a lot of damage. So
Mm.
taking away the likes of Siva is not maybe gonna change that much. But this Silas was so crucial in a lot of these fights, especially on getting that third Drake. Him taking away that Renato, hitting all of Invulnerable, getting the kill onto the Viego, making it so that they're able to snowball that game out is crucial, and I think they should not let him get that pick again as well.
And I think the way that Invulnerables ended up drafting with the Akali and the Gwen are champions that can do stuff in backline diving in team fights, but also function very well on side lanes. It never really felt like they were able to side lane for extended periods of time. They got those first two outer towers extraordinarily early into the game, but they never were able to apply as much pressure as they would have liked to. I think because of those early drakes that K5 were able to take, forcing them to contest them in the bottom side river.
Yeah, definitely. I If they do end up going for another early game draft, then they need to get these early drakes going for them. If they give over these early drakes when they go for the likes of Gwen, who wants to split push in the later stage of the game, it becomes very hard for her to make her job easy if you are going to have to contest these drakes.
It's going to be very important as we are a few moments away from Champion Select. So, Flipper, if we're talking about things that Invulnerables need to take off the table, we've already discussed that. Do you think there are any picks that you'd like to see that you think would enable the style of play that they want to move towards?
Yeah, if I would say that if they're gonna go all in on this early game, then I would almost say just just pick Elise. Because in the first game here, I did see some very good wave manipulation from the side of Invulnerable. They were able to stack up some good waves, and they were able to set up a very good dive. We do see we're jumping into Champion Select now. So Elise is a champion who can set up a very easy dive and can start up the snowball that they can enable from the bot side.
I think I saw Faith playing at least for Bifrost in their sort of run in the Aurora Open group stage. He was like playing 5 games of Sejuani, but they one all of them said like final game. Do you know what, man? Play the Elise, play your one trick, and just take over the early game. And he absolutely did. So even though it's a champion that I think is maybe a little bit more out of meta, it doesn't really matter as much if you win the damn game.
Yeah, definitely. But we do see the Caitlyn LeBlanc ban again from the side of Invulnerable.
This is
The
identical.
the drafts does seem to be the same, and if it is a salty run back, then maybe potentially Invulnerable is saying, okay, we didn't get the early game lead we want, but that was maybe because of some first game jitters, and in this game they probably maybe are saying, oh, we are able to now actually do what we set out to do with this comp. But as an outside perspective, I'm saying, okay, maybe it's not the ideal thing to do because it did seem like they were unable to actually pull out this kind of a draft.
And if you're K5, you don't really need to change too much.
No, no.
It was a gameplay thing. I think that is something key that we need to look towards. Is that if Invulnerables play their composition with a bit more agency and a bit more onus towards those early stages, maybe there's something there. But Silas
Yeah.
being first picked, it was dominant in that previous game, and we're seeing it once again.
Yeah, and now I want to see what kind of response I see to the Silas, because I don't want to see the same thing again. Ideally, they do hover the Varus already, but in this mid lane matchup, it was just the side of Silas just taking control. He was getting help from his side lanes to making sure he could do it. It is the Varus Karma, okay. This is
Okay.
interesting because Karma is a flex pick that can go in 3 lanes technically. You can go in the bot lane here as support. You can go in the mid lane as a potential AP carry, and they can go in the top lane as well if they do end up saying that. Not
Don't
very likely, of course.
don't talk to me about cover top lane, man. Don't come on, man. Come on. I just want to chill. I just want to chill without being poked every single time I walk up to get a CS. But I think if it does go into that support role, it does apply a bit more pressure in the lane than the Renata does to a certain extent. And that's kind of what you need if you're Piscolo and Sander, because they were falling to pretty significant CS deficits in a matchup that they really shouldn't have. No surprise that Floops going back to the Sivir once again was instrumental in those later team fights, dishing out the damage. And no do Thresh went unbanned. Of course he's going to pick it, guys.
I mean, it's basically just like saying, like, just poking the bear, saying, "Pick it, I dare you, I dare you." He's just gonna like, okay, give it to me then. I'm just gonna go crazy. But I will say it is smart picking the Karma instead of something like the Renata if it does end up going bot, because one of the reasons why Cobbin was so good on this Silas was because he was able to use this Renata ult so good. Hostile
Mm.
takeover was just taking over these fights.
It was exceptional stuff. As again, another bit of adaptation coming out from Invulnerables with the Fiora pick. I think a
Okay.
little bit more meta than the Gwen, and has a few more favorable matchups.
Yeah, and Fiora does more feel in sync with what they want to do. They did play kind of weak side towards bot last game. They didn't go for these Drakes. So if they're not gonna play Drakes, then you need one of these split pushers who's incredibly good. Fiora is probably the best split pusher in the game right now, and if he's proficient on it, he's able to just take over.
And this also means that most likely we're going to be seeing Fierce on counterpick. It's not, whilst he was able to sort of counterpick the Akali before, it didn't necessarily feel like the matchup that you'd want. So maybe they're leaving the pick for their mid laner for something that is going to interact a bit more holistically beneficially with what K5 are going to come out with. But we've seen the same 3 picks from K5 here, and I wouldn't be surprised if they just continue that pattern all the way through the draft.
Yeah, I mean it does just look like comfort. We know Cobbin like Silas, and we know Nodu really loves the fresh, and Floops is a fan of the Sivir, so it's just like, let's just take what
Might
we
as well.
like here and then just keep going with it till it fails. Because as long as they keep winning with these champions, there's no reason to actually change it up for something new.
Yeah, we're not in Fearless Draft just yet, although that does look really
Okay,
exciting.
we do
As
see the puppy ban. There won't be another ultra tanky puppy in this game. Might be an on instead, who knows? But not a puppy at least.
Udyr taken off the board here. That always breaks my heart a little bit. A big fan of the champion, but the Java Marud as well. So K5's trying to target out a little bit of that jungle pool. And Hellish, he didn't really feel like he was able to have a lot of impact in the early stages. And those are two champions that definitely function well in that role. There's still a lot on the board left here, though, for K5. You were talking about that Ornn being available, and while she doesn't have the same sort of defensive capabilities as the Poppy, can still get those engages going. Okay, Flipper,
It's
that's a Tryndamere.
okay, so now I'm just gonna be like, oh, you might think that Invulnerable is full AD here when you look at a Fiora, you look at like a Varus, and you look like at a Tryndamere, but a thing we saw from Caps early on this year was AP Varus. So this does look like it could be AP Varus with a Fiora and a Tryndamere on the sidelines, and just to put the Varus in the mid lane later on just to farm away with the poke, and then see if he can deal with that. But it's definitely throwing down the gauntlet here towards Stardust to say, I'm picking this Tryndamere and this Fiora. They can put it on either side. The one Fiora could end up going in the mid, the Tryndamere could end up going in the mid lane, and they're just gonna say, let's see, let's actually get the battle going.
We've got some crazy stuff, and I've won. I'm all here for it. Kindred going to be the pick here for Painful, and I like this. When you're playing against something like a Tryndamere that wants to dive in and go into that Undying range, being able to respond with essentially an AoE Undying range for your entire team is pretty OP. And the Mordekaiser that was banned in game one is going to be the pick for Stardust, is something that he really loves to pilot.
Yeah, and the Mordekaiser is a very good pick again. You're looking at a Fiora and a Tryndamere, and especially the Tryndamere, nobody realistically can stop this this Fiora from actually this Tryndamere from reaching Floops when he presses ult. He's just gonna run through everybody and actually end up killing them. So having this Mordekaiser who just say, nope, you're not touching Floops again now. Now Floops is just going untouched because they can actually remove one of these crucial members away.
And we were discussing that maybe there's the potential for full AD on the side of Invulnerables. You touched on that AP Varus. Karthus is kind of like two AP champions worth in terms of the amount of damage you can put out. But instantly, I'm seeing a little bit of an issue with the Invulnerables compositions outside of the Chains of Corruption. It doesn't really feel like there's much to lock down the members of K5B.
Yeah, and Invulnerable once again feels like they're saying, okay, we might have lost last game, but we are the better players, so we are just gonna pick all skirmish heavy champions and then a Karthus on top to press R when they're going for these skirmishes. So it's just basically saying, okay, we're not gonna actually team fight, we are just gonna play on the side lanes and we're gonna see if we can actually take over in these side lanes.
And
But
it feels kind of similar in some way to the game one draft, where it's like you've got the Gwen, the Viego, the Akali. If these champions get 2 kills, it's kind of just over if you're laning against them in the early stages. I think Fiora, Karthus, and Tryndamere are also champions that snowball incredibly effectively, that also fit into that style.
yeah, definitely. And it is again from the side of K5 a team fight is comp. They have the Kindred, the Silas, the Sivir, the Thresh, who are all incredibly good in a unit. So it's very hard for Invulnerable to ever break through this point. And it's actually very interesting to see how top lane is gonna go. I think top lane is gonna heavily decide how the flow of the game will go. If Usul is able to take over the lane, he's able to just completely dominate this game. But if Stardust is able to stave off the pressure that Usul is gonna bring to him, they are able to potentially just force fights, and he can just hold his own in the side lane.
Yeah, and the thing about the Mordekaiser is he is so incredibly tanky that even if you are locking one of these high damage threats like the Fiora, like the Tryndamere in that death realm, you're kind of just taking them out the fight and you're not really at too much threat yourself, as we are jumping onto the Rift for the second time today. Invulnerables chasing a win to even up the scores. At Karolinerna looking to put themselves to match point.
Yeah, and I will say that I once again heavily favor the K5 draft. It's very hard to execute these kinds of situations from the side of Invulnerable, and if they're going to do it, it's gonna be at the point of Usul. This Fiora has to be incredibly strong, incredibly potent in the side lane to make sure that they're able to take this game.
And Invulnerable is doing something a little bit funky at the level 1. We saw something similar from K5 in the previous game that was able to secure them the flash off Piskello, but not going to find anyone just yet, as members of K5 nowhere near the bottom side jungle.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's like both teams just handshook that they're gonna get a ward towards the enemy jungler, and they didn't see each other. They was like, okay, peace out. They did end up getting the wards they wanted, and now they end up getting the pink ward now for free. So it ends up being in favor of Invulnerable here because they're able to get this pink ward away. So there's not other information other than they did go for this invade and they're out. So it is an interesting start, and for these two types of junglers, it's the Kindred who wants to pick up these marks. So right now he's pathing towards bot, so he's hoping that this mark will spawn on the bot side.
Mm.
I know I played some Kindred myself. On Kindred, when you reach this 3 mark area to 5, that's where you actually start coming online. You start getting this bonus range on the future marks, but you end up getting these like passive ability upgrades when you get these first few marks.
Yeah, so the extra range and then obviously the extra maximum health damage, I think, off the Mounting Dread is very impactful. And this is what you can kind of do on the lane like the Karma Varus is you've got so much poke potential in the early stages. Piscolo opting for the Arcane Comet here as opposed to the lethal tempo. So a bit more lane focused, a bit more able to bully out in the early stages.
Yeah, and that's what we want to see. All of Invulnerable lanes has to just go full bully mode. All lanes just should go in their favor, and if they don't get a massive lead, then it's gonna be very hard for them to play out in these fights against K5's lineup.
Yeah, well, especially when you've got like a Karthus who is going to want to go for a bit more of that power farm style against a Kindred who is incentivized to invade. If you've got pushing lanes on the side of Invulnerables, it's so much harder for Painful to get access to those marks and to upgrade those abilities, which you kind of need to do to make the Kindred relevant.
Yeah, definitely. It's right now going as you would hope for if you're an Invulnerable fan. You're seeing all 3 lanes being pushed in. Already an early cheetah recall from Fierce, and you're seeing the top side being shoved in, the bot side being shoved in, and they are building up some decent CS leads already. So right now, if you're an Invulnerable fan, you're happy. You're seeing the game going as you wanted, and ooh, this is lucky for Painful. He gets this early mark in the bot side, so he can be happy. He gets his first mark for free. Even though that they didn't have bot lane power because they shoved in, and the Varus also took a cheetah recall, he gets this mark for free.
Yeah, and actually Piscolo going for the early tier, so going to be able to stack up towards the Manamune very quickly. Floops needs to be careful, forced to burn the flash to get out of the range of that tether. So we'll have to see if Invulnerables are actually able to punish an early summoner spell deficit on an AD carry.
And that is huge. To get this flash here basically means now that when Karthus comes off a recall, there is the option to actually just run bot and potentially just have Karma flash W onto Floops and just get a free kill.
But there is a little bit of vision placed in the bottom side of Hellish's jungle there by Painful, I believe. So the Karthus is moving towards there. It will be spotted out as in some heavy fighting in the mid lane. Painful is moving over. The Karthus is here as well with a level lead. The Wall of Pain, that slow so brutal, preventing Painful from getting on top of Fierce.
Yeah, you can definitely see once again, both teams know in mid lane there's gonna be trading, and whichever team can help more is gonna be able to make a difference. As we see,
Painful
big trades.
Needs to be careful, flashing away, Fierce diving forward. Cobbin, not much mana left on the Silas's Hellish. Again, not much mana left on the Karthus. He's forced to flash back himself. A bit over-aggressive from both teams.
Yeah, you definitely see Invulnerable seeing an option to actually get a pick off, maybe, to actually get this game rolling, but both teams, they just trade off. They trade some summoners. Both junglers end up using their flash. Ooh, Fierce!
Oh, Fierce! Flashing on top of Fierce and taking him out for first blood. That's massive.
That is huge, because this mid lane matchup now becomes way harder. I'm pretty sure he's able to just now push out this wave for free. Base again with a massive chunk of gold, and even though Cobbin has TP'ing back, he did not get the base he wanted here. And now Fierce is able to get a huge base with the first blood money, pick up Berserker Greaves, which is able to make it so that he potentially can just take over mid lane here.
The movement speed differential is so important on a melee champion like the Trendmere, and I don't know, if you're playing mid lane, you never want to recall and come back with a Sapphire Crystal, because the extra mana, it's nice, obviously, and being able to spam those spells a little bit more is great, but it doesn't give you too much additional raw combat power. And credit to Invulnerables actually not only getting that first blood, but the rest of the lane's going a hell of a lot better for them. Loops is going to be able to equalize the CS a little bit in the bottom lane, but Uzol's been having the run of topside against Stardust as Mordekaiser.
Yeah, and I'm very pleased to see that despite losing the first game, Invulnerable is definitely not giving up. Fierce sees the opportunity to take a kill down, and he just snaps, goes for it, and gets the free kill. But as much as I like to sing the praise of Invulnerable here, it is definitely still going good for K5. Floops, despite having to flow this early flash, is able to keep up in CS and is able to just maintain pressure. We do see an
Uh,
interesting roam here. They're
mm.
actually committing heavily to secure this crab for Painful, making sure that he now gets up to 2 marks, which is crucial for the Criminal, as you pointed out. Criminal needs this mark to be a champion. So they're actually
Wow.
investing now the Mordekaiser roam so that if there was going to be a fight, they would have a members advantage in here.
That's a full TP use, and obviously the sort of negative consequences of that are a little bit less now that teleports can't be used freely onto wards pre 14 minutes, have to be used onto the tower. So the proactive playmaker potential a little bit less there, and you'd expect the Mordekaiser to still be able to bully out the Fiora in the early stages. Has now got access to those plated steel caps, so reducing the damage from the auto attacks. But Invulnerables happy to start up this Drake.
And this is definitely what you like to see. One of the big crutches for them last game is that they had to give over these early drakes. This game, they get this first drake here, and it actually puts now not a timer on Invulnerable very early on into the game. They're now able to potentially utilize this 1-3-1 they've built for themselves with the Tryndamere and the Führer for longer. They're no longer forced to come fight early on for any kind of objective.
And the scaling potential is immense as well, right? Like, trying to deal with a Fiora in a side lane is hard enough, as Stardust are using the ultimate. And actually, 3 members of K5 in the top lane. There's very little that Uzo's going to be able to do. Gets flayed back and slowed down. The riposte does absolutely nothing. The Ghost has been popped. But with a couple more hits, K5 will take out the top laner. Nudu just trying to save it as Painful dashes forward, but the support claims the kill.
Yeah, they came a bit closer than I would have thought it would be, but a very good roam from Nodu and very good link up with Painful to secure a topside kill. Now they're looking to see if they can secure this herald, but we see both Piscalo and Sander has moved up and they're looking to fight.
Uzol has the TP as well when he respawns, and Loops is finally making his way towards the top side, but Invulnerables feel like they could take the fight. That's a beautiful Lamb's respite from Painful to buy a little bit more time. There goes the stolen Karthus ultimate actually to deal a load of damage to Invulnerables as Fierce in the Undying Rage is forced to spinning slash away. Invulnerables claim the Herald in the top side.
Yeah, and despite it being incredibly well done from Painful with a beautiful ult to save Stardust.
Requiem.
Maybe
I
not.
think Stardust is dead here.
Oh, the shield.
Shield just
He ends
enough.
up living, but despite having a beautiful start of a fight from Invulnerable, they're able to get away scot-free from K5, not losing any lives, but they get the Herald, and that is huge. Now if they're able to actually potentially do a roam towards topside and kill this Mordekaiser, that's an entire turn for the Fiora. If they can get a good fight anywhere here with the Herald on their side, it could just be a big snowball effect that gets them an entire turn with 5 plays.
Yes, there's a lot of damage. Ooh, Colin forced to flash away. Still a little bit of time before the Undying Rage is available, but Fierce absolutely seeing a window that he can go for a play and taking advantage of it. And we haven't had any plates taken down, so there's still a lot more gold that can go into the hands of Invulnerables, even though they're already 1,000 ahead.
Yeah, and as I said before, if K5 is not able to maintain the level of play that they showed in game 1, Invulnerable is poised to just take every game. And in this game, they're showing it. They are getting a huge gold lead here in the early game, which they do need, and they're able to just keep the pressure mounting. They used the Herald mid here very early on to get a big gold influx now towards the Tryndamere. Tryndamere is incredibly far ahead here. He got the early first blood, and he's gotten now 3 plates towards himself.
Yeah, I wonder if production will be able to toggle the gold just briefly so we can have a little look at that. I mean, yeah, 800 ahead. I mean, Hellish is in a sort of 1k advantage in the jungle as well. The mid-jungle duo for Invulnerables really showing up in this second game.
Definitely, and it comes down to K5 being a little bit loose on it. They did a greedy recall with Painful, which Fierce just took to himself and said, no, you are not allowed to recall in this spot, and he just kills him immediately. And from there, it has just been them having all of the control in mid, and from that, able to actually get a Drake from it, and now also able to get a Herald, because it was Fierce who was able to get in deep, force all of the K5 members away, and able to make them secure the Herald as well.
And whilst we're on the subject of objectives, we've got a Drake spawning in a minute and a half, and I think that's going to be really interesting to look at, because that was sort of the real crutch, the real thing that propelled K5 through that game one was the pressure that they had around those early Drakes. But the shoe's a little bit on the other foot now. Invulnerables with that first Cloud Drake and with the mounted spawning in a minute in the advantage.
Yeah, and for this Drake, I'm looking at this item coming in. We do see first item on towards Hellish. He's already gotten that. It is Leandris, and I'm looking to see who else will finish items. If K5 is not able to finish this first item breakpoint, I would want to see them give it and look to fight for the third. Because if they are just fighting up against all these item completions from the side of Invulnerable with the 2k lead, the 2k gold lead, as we see a fight in bot.
Aaron, well, I think Piscolo kind of accepting his fate a little bit here, Flipper. You don't win a 1v3 at this point on the Varus, and Painful gets the kill. I believe that may have been a mark skill, so 3 hit for the Kindred. Once you get that 4th, you get that bonus range.
Yeah, and that is huge. The 3 clutch is very big, as we see a potential... Oh, okay, I thought they were potentially gonna die, but that is gonna take the plate and leave. But that is huge. They get the kill, which now gives them the setup for the Drake. And potentially we will see the second Drake of the game.
Oh, that's a mark as well. That's a mark as well. Okay, that's 4 for Painful. So
huge.
The Kindred are in a pretty good point, but we're still down mythics on the side of K5, whereas you look over at Invulnerables and you've got an Eclipse there on Piscolo, you've got that Leandris, like you already mentioned, for Hellish, and the Divine Sunderer for Uzol. Such a massive spike.
Yeah, and you can see K5 is recognizing that they are at this deficit going for picks. Okay, I hold my breath every time I see Nodu going for these hooks, and I'm like, is he gonna hit it? Is he gonna hit it? And then goes like, but K5 are actually gonna poising to fight here.
Wall of Pain thrown out, and it's so difficult for them to move forward. Fierce still has access to the Undying Rage. That is a very early Lamb's Respite used by the jungler of K5, and well, it's actually going to benefit Invulnerables more than anything else. They're able to take down the Drake, and now the Tryndamere, low HP, will be the sacrifice.
Yeah, and that is definitely what you want from the side of Invulnerable, getting these early Drakes. It does mean now they have even more time. There's not a timer in the world that's going to stop them from being able to utilize this split push threat that they will have from the side of Invulnerable, from both Fiora and Tryndamere now. So they can sit back and relax and just not contest next tricks and try to see if they can get these side lane turns now and actually break open the game.
I think that's the key thing. Once you've got these side lane leads, that's kind of what you want to move towards, as we did just see Painful believe secured himself another mark on the top side, taking down one of those big crux. So slowly stacking up there on the Kindred, but still far behind the curve. 30 CS down against Hellish, who is going to be such an incredible damage threat.
Yeah, Hellish is definitely looking to be the difference maker in this game with his ult. It is still the side of Fiora that has to actually make this game work for Invulnerable. She has to start winning the side lane when she hits these 2 to 3 item marks, and actually be able to take over the side lane, so they have this threat where it makes it so K5 has to respond with multiple members to actually make sure that they're not able to actually just take over the game from there.
I mean, and that's the thing. Like, Fiora's the grand duelist, but she kind of could just fight as many people as she wants when she gets to an accelerated state. And again, she's at a very, very proficient point in power. And I think K5, they want the game to slow down again, right? They want Floops to get towards this 3-item point, but Invulnerables, with only 1 kill on the board, kind of just aren't letting them. They are still pressurizing, they are still making things happen.
Yeah, and there was a 2k gold lead for the side of Invulnerable, which has now been dwindled down to only like 800 to 1000k gold lead now, which is massive for them because they are looking to scale up. They're looking to slow down the game, as you said, to actually get towards these item breakpoints where they're able to now be able to fight again.
This is going to be a hard play on to evolve level 11 on the Fiora, and I think, yeah, that's smart from Painful. You back away, Stardust is already 40% HP, you don't win that fight.
Yeah, definitely. And it's just very good to see Invulnerable are waking up in the series. It seems like they're able to now utilize this pressure that they get from the picks that they're picking, which they need to create to actually see if they can close out this game with the lead. It's still far away to go. They have 2 Drakes. They're able to now get these items rolling for their Fiora and their Tryndamere to see if they can actually keep the snowball going, because they need to keep the snowball going. We need to remember there is a Kindred and a Sivir on the side of K5 who, if they reach these item breakpoints, are able to just take over the game. And they do keep going for these stacks. We see Kindred again going for another mark, and he's looking to pick that one up as well.
These are so incredibly powerful. They're 5 there. Gonna turn that into 6. But in the meantime, Invulnerables were able to pick up the Herald, and I think that's really key in this game because 16 minutes in, we haven't seen a tower fallen down. And once you take out a couple of those structures, the map becomes a little bit more open for you to play in. So Invulnerables, with that big tower taking threat in their back pocket, will have to see how they use it.
Yeah, definitely. I would want them to see them use it mid, because if they can break open this mid tower, it makes it so much easier to play the map for the side of Invulnerable. That means that they can put the Varus and Karma mid, they can shove in waves, and they can get vision towards a side lane and just take over on that side and make it so easy for them to actually split push.
They're overloading potentially in the bottom lane as Painful dives onto Sander, but Hellish is here to respond with the Rule of Pain, and that forces the K5 jungler away. Piscolo's going to have some time to hit onto these towers. Actually gets hit by the Stolen Chains of Corruption, chained into the Everfrost. There is nowhere to go for the Varus. Another kill for K5.
Yeah, and K5 is doing what they should. They are trying to make picks constantly to slow the game down. We keep seeing Invulnerable trying to accelerate the game by taking Heralds, taking Drakes, but K5 is saying, okay, yes, you can get these neutrals, but we just want the goal. We want to get these item break points as fast as possible to actually make sure that we reach the correct state that we can need to win the game.
And I think this is kind of a result of something that we highlighted in draft, right? There's a lot of damage for Invulnerables, but there's not too much setup. There's not too many abilities to lock people down. So even though you are in this advantageous position for the time being, it becomes a hell of a lot harder for you to actually force fights onto your opponents, and the only way you can really generate your leads is through map movements.
Definitely, and it's at this point in the game where I want to see them utilize their 1v1. They've gotten 2 Drakes now. They do not need to contest this Drake. They can try to see if they can get some of the standing gold in the turrets on the map, and they can just see if they can snowball it from there, because they can get like 2 or 3k gold if they just end up getting all of these outers that they are so low right now.
K5, though, recognizing that they don't want to give over a soul point for free, so moving down, and that means that Uzol is able to take that first tower. 30 CS lead on the Fiora, and that extra gold from the first turret. Herald being summoned in the mid lane. Invulnerables, I think they heard us there, Flipper. They are going to try and take out these structures and push K5 back. Response here, the ultimate forces Stardust to flash over the wall.
Yeah, and despite expecting them not to contest the Drake but take structures, they are taking structures and they're contesting Drake. They are trying to get everything, and
the Chains of Corruption there onto Floops as Fierce is in the back line. They've already killed the AD carry, but the Karthus goes down as well. Still has access to that passive, that ultimate, that extra damage potential. And it's 2 kills in favor of Invulnerables, only losing their jungler. That's going to make it a bit harder to take the Drake.
yeah, and Invulnerable getting out ahead here. They're now getting to soul point with a comp where I would expect them not to actually get to soul comp this easy. But they are now, oh, it looks like K5 are still looking to fight, but I think this is not a fight K5 wants to take.
It's difficult. I mean, Fierce doesn't have the ultimate yet, so if you can get a load of damage onto this Tryndamere, it is going to stick. K5 are starting to move in, but the poke coming out from Piscolo is so instrumental at preventing K5 from moving forward. I think that's smart. Yeah, you just back away, you let them take the Drake, but this means in 5 minutes' time, you are going to be facing down a Hex Tech Soul.
Yeah, and this puts so much more pressure on K5 now. They not alone have split push threat, but if they just get a random steal now on a Drake, that also just means that the game becomes incredibly hard to play. So I will say that K5 are put into a hole here where they have to find a way to dig themselves out. They are making good picks, but they cannot rely on the picks to win the crucial team fights. They have to start actually playing better in these fights if they want to be able to take this game.
So the advice is to get good.
Yeah, I mean, with the comp they have, they need to play these team fights better if they're gonna be able to actually win it. Because right now they are not able to coordinate well enough. They are kind of using the Kindred ult in an awkward manner, and they're using the Mordekaiser ult in an awkward manner. They're not coordinated enough to actually protect their carries. Right now, Nodu and Floops are not coordinated well enough, so it becomes harder for them to actually secure a Floops who's able to just deal damage uncontested as they were able to in last game, because we know they're able to do this. We know they're able to actually keep Floops safe and manage to actually make it so that he can carry the fight. So you just have to find that way again in this game.
And it becomes a bit harder because Starduster, yes, he can put someone into the death realm, but realistically there are kind of 3 people on Invulnerables that can kill Floops. And it's not particularly difficult for them if they are in that scenario. So we'll have to track if the K580 carry is able to dish out the damage. No, going a little bit wide there as Invulnerables, I think, recognizing the power that they have. They can move into this topside river, start clearing out vision around this Baron. And if they get a pick, they can turn it into an objective. This is going to be fine. Blast guns over the wall.
Yeah. And it's... Yeah, they had to, in these kind of low states, look for the picks that they've been able to make in the previous low states we've seen before. It is now, does seem like that it's just completely in Invulnerables' control. They have full map control, they push out mid, they can move to the side, they're gonna get the spot turret as well, and it looks like they're just able to do whatever they want here on the map.
And it's a 3k gold advantage for them. It's been very well earned, and again, a hell of a lot more control, a hell of a lot more patient, I guess, in terms of the gameplay that we've seen really from both of these teams. And maybe that's a little bit of a lack of proactivity that could come back to bite you. But when you're Invulnerables and your composition is scaling as well as it is doing, I don't think you care.
Yeah, and it's definitely a different look. Last game this was what we wanted to see from Invulnerable last game, and we're seeing it this game again now. They did the same kind of style of draft, and they're able to now take the early game lead, and they're able to take over the Drakes, and they're able to just take over the game.
K5 not giving up without a fight though, as they are going to be jumping on top of Fierce and pull him back, going forward on the Tryndamere. But once again, another hook from Nodu is going to force him away, and Painful with his 3rd kill of the game. The Kindred is not a champion that you can ignore right now. He's going to be at 2 items in soon enough, as Uzol looking for a 1v1 onto Starduster, and K5 starting up the Baron.
That is such a huge pick. They're now able to start up the Baron, and there is no Tryndamere to stop them. It's going to be hard for them to actually stop this Baron from K5.
It's a lot of poke, and the Requiem is going to force them back. You can really just shove them off at your Invulnerables without having to commit too hard to the fight. Yes, Uzol is TPing in, but that's a small price to pay to keep the Baron alive. Yeah,
and that is the power of Karthus. I was thinking that there was no way they could push them off it, but Karthus ult just makes it that simple. Press R and they all have to run back because that damage is crazy high.
A little bit unfair as a death cap completed for Hellish, so the Requiem becomes even more potent, and that Hextech Soul that we were sort of talking about being something that Invulnerables can play towards, spawning in a minute's time as these item completions are starting to come through. Ravenous, in addition to that Divine Sunderer for Uzol, and we've got the 2-item core on Pisclo on this Poke Varus with that Muramana completed. It's so difficult for K5 to even walk forward.
And I think a crucial item is Quicksilver on Fierce here. He is the guy who is able to just run through everybody now to reach Floops. It's so hard now to stop Fierce from actually making a disruption onto Floops, making him unable to deal damage, which can pay dividends in this upcoming soul fight we're gonna have.
Ooh, that's maybe a bit of a preemptive Chains of Corruption used by Pisclo. Crucially, one of the few engaged tools that Invulnerables do actually have, that when you are getting to this point where you've got so much damage, that can kind of just be your engaged Coven jumping onto Fierce's Floops, also using the ultimate, and now there is nowhere to go for Pisclo. Locked down in the mid lane and taken out. That's a pick for K5, and that's going to free up this Drake.
Yeah, and that's what we want to see. We want to see them make these picks just before an objective spawns, making sure that they're able to deny the soul now. It will not get them out of the hole that they're in just yet, but it's definitely the beginning of some lights showing from K5. They're now able to get this Drake, they're going to get their resets out, and they're going to be able to actually get some map control back that they definitely need.
Absolutely, as Uzol going for another one onto Starduster. Is going to be able to proc all of the vitals, but K5's top laner flashing over the wall just in time. Uzol with the Ghost chasing him down. The Death Grasp pulls him away as the Lantern is there from Nodu to keep the Mordekaiser alive. That's big, and for K5, we were talking about how well Invulnerables scale, but that Sivir still there. 2 items building towards that Infinity Edge. You can't count them out yet.
Yeah, and it is definitely what we want to see from Uzol. He's now sitting in a comfortable state. He's now winning this matchup very heavily, and we do need him to keep putting on this pressure. Get these towers down, keep seeing if you can actually kill this Mordekaiser side, and it's going to be so huge for how this game is being played if they're able to now just take over the side lane. They have 2 items on Yusol, and he could be now the difference maker in how the map is played out.
It's the split pushing that Invulnerables wanted to do in game 1, sort of being played out in this game 2. And game 5, they haven't really been able to force the sort of big team fights that won them that first game, that pushed them to that advantage. And Starduster at this point, there's so little that he can do to stop the Fiora in the side lane, as Corbin is now being caught out, has stolen away the Undying Rage, so he's going to be able to stay alive for a little bit longer. Sander is just dead, and Painful may be able to get a couple of kills for actually Hellish flashing forward to try and take out the Sylas, but it is a double kill for the Kindred just outside of the Lamb's respite. And Corbin will fall down 2 for 1 in the top lane in favor of K5.
Yeah, and we do see some crucial flashes getting used. We see the flash from Painful and from Corbin, but they do end up getting 3 flashes from the side of Invulnerable, which will be huge in the upcoming Drake fight in 3 minutes time. That there's no flash on Trunamere could make the difference, because Floops is still sitting with his flash, potentially able.
This is risky here, Floops. You don't win. You don't win this, buddy.
Yeah,
just stay alive. No! Why did you go back in, man? Uzo locked in the death realm. Surely he's going to be taken out. There's no way that Fiora wins a 1v3. Dashes back, Flayed and Painful is going to be granted the shutdown. Okay, so that's even more gold going onto this Kindred, who was already incredibly scary.
Yeah, and just as I was about to point out that Floops has both the splashes up, I don't have time to talk about that. They are already going onto the Baron.
But K5 are going to move over, and once again, the team's being forced off of the Baron. And with the lead that Invulnerables have built for themselves in the early stages, it feels like they're slowing down a little bit in these later parts where they should be a bit stronger. Uzo 3 items now on the Fiora, but getting pressured away.
Yeah, and as I was trying to say before all of the shenanigans happened, we do see Floops blowing both of the summoners in the end there. So in this Drake fight, it's gonna be no summoners on the side of Floops, but also no flash on the side of the Trunamere and on the side of the Karma. So it's gonna be difficult fight, I would say, for K5 to win, because they are facing up against an extremely fed Karthus and a Trunamere who's ready to just steamroll the fight.
Navori Quick Blades now completed for Fierce, so extra cooldown reduction. Those spinning slashes basically happen every 2 seconds, and movement speed is not enough to get you away. K5 pressuring top lane 28 minutes in, going to be able to secure their first tower of the game.
Yeah, it's definitely what you like to see, in the sense of they're showing life. Even though they haven't got a tower yet, they grew up, they get the tower, they don't lose anything on the map because there's no towers in the bot side to respond with, so they just have to now catch the waves and now prepare to contest this, once again, soul that Invulnerable is able to attain if they get the Drake.
And the thing is, that soul, the extra ability, haste the attack speed, but also the chain lightning with the slow can provide a little bit of that setup that Invulnerables are lacking. So if they're able to get that, you can just kind of drop a Requiem down on K5, slow them up, and that means it's a hell of a lot easier to move in. We can see here Invulnerables trying to get a bit more priority in the mid lane.
Yeah, and I'm looking at Fierce and at Floops in this team fight, in who is gonna kill who. If Floops is able to survive and go unscathed in this onslaught that's gonna come onto him, he's able to take over. He's still not at the 3-item breakpoint, which is huge for the side of Invulnerable, but it's just gonna come down to, is he able to dish out the damage needed? And even for Painful, is he able to also be a difference maker in how this fight's gonna go?
Oh, Starduster diving into the backline, but is going to get focused immediately. The Death Realm pulls back Hellish, and the Karthus can't contribute to the fight. He dies before it even gets started. Here comes the Requiem. That's going to provide a load of damage, but the Lamb's respite keeps K5 healthy. Now a 4v5 around the Dragon.
It's huge. They get the pick on Hellish, which means there's no smite anymore, able to actually secure the Drake to Fierce.
Fierce diving in the Undying Range, and it's blue team that get the Baron. K5 deny the soul for another 5 minutes. They get the kill onto Sander. That's 3 dead on the side of Invulnerables as finally Uzul shows up to the fight. Level 16 can start to take over. Floops has absolutely nowhere to go as the Fiora claims a triple kill. Piscalo flashing over the wall and Cobbin gets out with the blast cone, but Uzul isn't done. A Penta is on the cards, and I think the Fiora is going to secure it. A rampage kill for the Invulnerables top laner, and Starduster is crusading to his death. An unofficial pentakill for Uzul.
Yeah, and we were pointing towards Fierce having to reach the backline. He does not need to do anything when Uzul is able to perform like that. He just takes over, killing every single member alone basically in that fight, making sure that they're able to win the fight and get the Baron now.
And this is the issue when you are playing against so many high damage carries. Hellish was taken off the board immediately, but it didn't matter. Uzul comes in, 3 items, just completely wipes everybody, and Invulnerables, even though they don't get that soul, with that Baron at the backs, the split pushing can become just incredible.
Yeah, and we are definitely running into a state now where I even thought in that fight that it was looking like a K5 favorite situation, but Uzul just came in and he just took over and killed every single player. Such a well-played fight from him, and an incredibly lucky situation that K5 got the Drake for them, and they were able to make sure that they don't now face a Baron and a sold up Invulnerable. So it is not the worst of situation for the side of K5, but they now have to survive this onslaught of the Baron.
Yeah, but there's no one that can fight against Uzul right now. Level 18, 4 items completed on the Fiora. The Grand Duelist is looking a little bit more than grand, a little bit disgusting, honestly, at this point with the pressure that you can put out. Invulnerables, they're still going to need to break the base of K5, and with Fierce chasing down Starduster in the ultimate, isn't going to be able to do it as the Mordekaiser is still particularly tanky in the 1v1.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm looking towards this 1v1, how they actually set it up, because ideally they want to have the waves crash at the same time and apply maximum pressure. If they're able to do that, it should be possible for them to get at least all of the outer turrets down, which should make it so they have a massive gold lead going into the next Drake. Because what I'm looking at is not a game-ending Baron, but a Baron that sets Invulnerable up perfectly for when the next Drake spawns.
It just puts K5 in a position where they have to run through so much darkness to get towards that dragon. By the time that they're there, it's already fallen down, and that's sort of what we're talking about. The mid lane tower falling, the top lane tower falling as well. All of the outer structures wiped off the map, and K5, they've only got their base remaining.
Yeah, and that is definitely what you'd like to see if you're an Invulnerable fan. They're able to take out all of these outers. They can choose the base now if they want. We do see the Tryndamere staying still. It is hard to push into a Sivir. She clears these waves so incredibly fast, so it will be hard to break open the base, but not impossible if they're able to get a random pick with and Tryndamere or something like this. It is possible to break open, but most likely gonna be the end here of this push.
Still 30 seconds left on the Baron, so 1 or 2 more waves that can get pushed in, but K5 have done a good job of actually stymieing this push and preventing Invulnerables from getting too much closer. They're saying that. Finally, we've got the ability to hit a little bit onto the mid lane tower, but the Shurelya's Battle Song gets everybody out of there. Uzul not really able to find too much more pressure in the top lane either, as actually K5 maybe this is an opportunity to take out the Fiora. Painful Gale forcing forward. This is so much committal on to the side laner, but they're not going to get her.
Yeah, and now we go into 1 minute till this Drake. This is definitely gonna be the nail in the coffin for the side of K5 if they are not able to get it. If Invulnerable get it, then they are able to just take over this game, and they will try to even up the score at that point. But it is not over just that. We do see 3 items on the Sivir. This Floops has been silently not doing too much in this game yet, but this could be where he starts opening up and is able to actually make the comeback happen for the side of K5.
I mean, that's what it was like in game 1, right? You have the Sivir just sort of silently scaling, but once you get to the itemization can completely rip open the team fights. But the issue is you're playing against Hellish, who is level 17 and 3 items on the Karthus himself. So even if you die right at the start of the fight, you can still dish out a hell of a lot of damage. 10 seconds until the Drake spawns, and K5 having such a difficult time moving into the river.
Yeah, this is definitely looking very hard for K5 to get into it. It almost might might have to be a steal from the side of Painful, but they do get in here. Let's see what's gonna happen in this fight here.
Stardust once again going over the side, this time being soloed out by Huzel. It's so much damage. Painful forcing the Karthus away as here comes the Requiem. The Lamb's Respite will keep K5 alive, but Invulnerables can go forward. A steal, a Hextech Soul, and I think that's going to be it, Flipper. K5 have already lost 3, and Common could run for the hills, but he will eventually die. The Undying Rage stolen away will get him a kill, but we're seeing teleports towards the base. Invulnerables going for the end.
Yeah, and as we said, they do end up getting the Drake, and they're able to now close out the game. And it's huge. Now it's 1-2-1, and it's gonna be very interesting to see if K5 has something else in their pocket. We have only really seen this so far. They're Fresh, Sivir, and Silas in the series. Now they have to go into the think tank and see if they can find a new way to actually break down Invulnerable.
Adaptation now going to be on the side of the blue side team as Invulnerables even up the series 1-1.
Yeah, and it was definitely Yusel on the Furor who was massive in that game, getting the unofficial Penta, taking over in a fight that actually looked very grim for the side of Invulnerable, but he was the difference maker. We pointed out in the beginning of the game he has to be the guy who takes over, and he definitely took over.
And I think the key thing is, right, we talked about the Silas being left available, we talked about the Sivir and the Thresh being left available, and it didn't seem to matter. Invulnerables, they stared down the picks that were so disastrous against them in game 1. They didn't blink, they come up with a new composition, and they make it work. Flipper, I said that this wasn't going to be a 3-0, and Invulnerables are proving us right. We going to be jumping to a short break now, but stick around because in a few minutes' time, we'll be seeing who can take advantage in game 3 of the series.